What is up, guys? John here from ChildBadFitness.com and Acceleration Fitness. Today, I've got a big old board here, and I'm going to talk about my favorite posterior chain exercises. So, a little rundown here. If you don't know your posterior chain, it's everything on the back side. So that we include everything from here down to here, all along that back. So that includes, the major muscles like your hamstrings, your glutes, calves, all your low back muscles, your upper back, your mid back, everything, even up in your neck too. So this is going to be very important just for overall strength development, whether you are an athlete, whether you are, a strength athlete, whether you are just the soccer mom that wants to, lose weight and get stronger, because all that stuff, stronger this is here, the less likely you are to have low back pain, the less likely you are to injure yourself down the road, the more apt you're going to be able to, do the things you like to do just in everyday life for longer. The more strength you have, the better off you will be. So, I'm going to break it down here into about four main sections. The upper back, and in this I'm going to include basically everything from, T-spine up, so mid back up, and it says just upper, low back, glutes, and hamstrings. Then of course there's others like I said, the neck, but that's also included. With the low back and upper back, they're all connected in there, so it kind of all goes together, the main ones anyway. And then, but there's a lot of smaller muscles in the neck, but I'm not really going to get into that. Maybe I'll make a separate video of just how to train the neck some other time. Then with the glutes, obviously the big ones right there, but then I'm going to talk a lot about the smaller ones underneath, and then hamstrings as well. So these are going to be the main groups. We're going to start with upper back. So in the upper back, there is a lot of different muscles. So you've got your main ones, of everybody knows the lats, the traps, all that. But there are also a lot of other muscles that are going to play into the rotator cuff, and even not in the rotator cuff, but are active within moving the scapula or the shoulder blade. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, but I'm going to break down some of my favorites for the upper back. So I'm going to kind of start here with face pulls. So face pulls are tremendous for building the very top in the upper back area, and you can actually change the variations of them to kind of target different areas, but it's going to hit your upper back and even into your lower neck there. So a face pull basic movement is going to be here, right? So it's high, my elbows are high. It's like a high row per se, so you can call it a high row. Face pulls are tremendous for that. Now these things are going to be great for people who are very internally rotated to kind of pull things back. If you have weak upper back here, it's not going to allow, in a tight chest there, it's not going to allow you to pull back and retract like that. So those are going to be great for anybody who plays a sport, all of the stuff, but especially face pulls are great for trying to help prevent concussions in the long term and stuff like that. And they'll give you big old upper back that everybody wants. So face pulls are awesome. Then, next, low rows. Most people just call them rows. I call them low rows because, like I said, I kind of consider the face pull a high row, and I consider anything else a low row. So a low row is anything in this variation of mine, in my mind, whether you're here, a little bit lower, whether you're rotating there or not. And so this is going to hit just a little bit lower in that back. You're really going to feel that squeeze between the shoulder blades, hitting those rhomboids, and all the other muscles that we already hit here in the face pull. So the low rows are kind of a classic exercise. Any variation you could, the classic one arm row is considered a low row. There's a million different ways to do them, whether it's machine, band, body weight with a suspension or TRX straps, bands, I don't know if I said that already. But low rows are tremendous for just building a big upper back, or big back in general, sorry, not just upper back, and really hitting the lats I love for. Then, I'm going to kind of consider So this in general, there's a lot of different rotator cuff muscles. There's, 4 main rotator cuff muscles that are considered rotator cuff muscles, but then there's also other little muscles that also kind of play a role, but the main 4 ones are very important for shoulder health, right? So there's a lot of different variations you can do with bands, weights, cables, any resistance, and that's gonna be your, externals, your internals. The face pulls are gonna help a lot with that. Even shrugs can kind of help protect the rotator cuff. But basically, the stronger your upper back in general is, the better off you will be. But the rotator cuff specifically is very important. I love to do these like external rotations. I love externals, whether it's with a weight or whether it's with a TRX or suspension strap. You do a face pull, boom, external before I bench, or really before any workout, squat, anything like that, to hit those muscles. And one thing when you're hitting these versus low rows or even face pulls, you have to go a lot lighter. You should go a lot lighter when you're working with, when you're targeting the rotator cuff muscles specifically, because they're very small muscles. They can't handle a high load, and when you start to go into a higher load, then other muscles start to kind of, play a role and take over per se. So you're not necessarily targeting the rotator cuff muscles exactly. So seriously, guys, I use 5-pound dumbbells for most of my rotator cuff work, and if you're just starting out, 2.5s or like the ladies, so a lot of my clients that are ladies, I'll have them use 2.5-pound plates, because you do not need a lot of weight, and it's better if you use lightweight with the rotator cuff. Now the low rows and face pulls, you can go a little bit heavier, especially the rows. Face pulls, you want to stay about medium. There's a place for heavier, but there's a place for lighter. But with the low rows, you can get away with a lot heavier, but you should also work in some lighter weight with pauses and really focusing on the contraction. That's another thing to be said on all of these. Whether it's you're doing a face pull or a low row, you need to really focus on the contraction, right? It's kind of that bodybuilder style to thinking, and it's totally right, okay? You really want to squeeze at the top, right? So it's going to help a lot, and then you're going to kind of develop that mind to muscle connection. It's a real thing, and it can help a lot when you get further in your training. So face pulls, low rows, rotator cuff. Then in here, I'm also going to put 2 things kind of together. And that's going to be shrugs and or carries. So this is gonna, excuse me, this is gonna hit the upper back quite well. Really, carries hit literally everywhere, but the shrugs and the carries are great for your traps, and if you're doing them correctly, retracting the scapula, retracting the shoulder blades, pulling back, opening that chest up. So, and the fun thing about these is you can go a lot heavier, so you can kind of give a heavy stimulus to those muscles, and in conjunction with a lighter one, with if you're using a band for, say, a band pull apart or a row or something like that. So shrugs and carries are very beneficial, and at first I did lots of shrugs, then I kind of moved away from them under the thinking that it was just the bro thing, and they didn't really need them. But then after listening to a lot and reading a lot about Louis Simmons and just the benefit of shrugs and the different variations you can do with shrugs, can really benefit things. And personally, I think I've seen a big increase in my overall back strength with putting in shrugs, and then also the farmer's walks and carries. And with the carries, you don't have to be limited to just straight up farmer's walks. You can do, a suitcase carry, so 1 dumbbell. You can switch up the implement you're using, whether it's handles, kettlebells, with a fatter grip, or lighter dumbbell or smaller radius dumbbell grip. You can use even bands hooked around a kettlebell. Joe DeFranco is big on those, and it almost gives it a stability factor as well, paired up with fat grip. So all those kind of things work well to develop the upper back. And then also, with that being said, I want to put in, let's just put it right here. These two are kind of in their own category here, just because they're not really any of the above. I mean, it's kind of a row variation, and your rotator cuff is going to potentially benefit, but band pull aparts and tees are wonderful for hitting that upper back, specifically right around the scapula and shoulder blades. So our band pull aparts here, and there's different variations. You can do X pull aparts, you can do normal, you can start high, go low. There's different variations there, but they're going to be really beneficial, and then as well as tees. So almost like a reverse fly, but a little bit further back, right? So reverse fly, you'd kind of be hitting here with the delts, but a T, palms are away, a little bit lower. You're gonna feel it kind of right between those shoulder blades. Those are gonna be very beneficial, and they don't really fit in any other category. So those are awesome as well. So that is it for upper. Now we're gonna move on to the low back, and when I'm talking about the low back, I mainly mean kind of from T-spine down to just above the pelvis, and the main focus here is going to be the spinal erectors. So the big, the chunky kind of muscles that run up all the way up my back here, all the way, and actually attach right to the base of the skull there. That is where they end technically, and they originate from the pelvis. So they run all the way through the back, and they actually are considered in kind of the upper back region also, but main focus is going to be in the low back. So these are essential muscles that basically, just like the name suggests, kind of help keep us upright, right? So when you flex forward like that, these guys are going to be involved in extension of the hip. So they're going to be very important for that. So if you're a strength athlete, or you're just a general fitness enthusiast who wants to get their deadlift or squat up, your low back is going to be an area that you want to target particularly. So a lot of people, they'll focus on the upper back, they'll focus on the glutes and hamstrings, but then sometimes they kind of fall into this rhythm where they forget about training the low back directly, right? So some of my favorites are going to be the following. Number one is the back extension, whether it's on a 45-degree back raise or back extension machine, or a glute ham raise or glute ham device. Back extensions are going to be great for targeting the erectors. Now, glutes and hamstrings are going to be very involved in that, especially with, actually, let me rephrase that. So the glutes and hamstrings are going to be very involved in that, but I like them a lot for the erectors, right? So they're going to help kind of, obviously pull us through that extension pattern. Obviously the glutes and hamstrings, like I said, are very involved, especially the glutes, but it is, I like them as a low back focus. And I like to do these, whether it's just body weight for higher rep, throw a band on around your neck and then kind of rest it low on the shoulders and the top of the traps there, or on the neck on the top of the upper back there, or holding a weight, whether it's a plate, a dumbbell, or even just doing or throwing a bar, like a safety squat bar, works great because it doesn't roll off right on your back, and doing back extensions like that. Or if you're advanced, another way to do it is actually deadlifting from a back extension. So I think Pete Rubish pretty much made that popular, where you set up in the 45-degree back extension, just like you would do a back raise, but there's a bar on the floor. You come down, you deadlift it up, right back down. So it's going to help kind of train the lockout of your deadlift particularly. And I really like those for the strength athletes and whatnot, or the advanced trainees. And I like those a lot for myself. So back extensions are key. I don't like doing them as much on the glute ham raise, just because for me it's a little more awkward. I prefer the actual back extension machine, but it does work on there as well. So that is the main one that I wanted to hit. Now another one here, this is gonna really, this could technically be in any category. This could be in upper back, this could be in low back, this could be in glutes, this could be in hamstring. This is just one of those exercises, kind of like the squat or the deadlift, that is great at developing the whole posterior chain. And that is good mornings. So our good morning, bar on the back, coming down and up, okay? So this is going to be great in low back land, per se, for just overall maintaining, position throughout. If you come here and you start to round, that's not what we want. So good mornings are great in that aspect. And then they also train the glutes and the hamstrings and the upper back, especially going back to the upper back if you use a safety squat bar. So a safety squat bar is one of the handles here. It's a little more, it's gonna pull you forward a little bit more, the way it sits. So it's gonna kind of want to round the thoracic, round that upper back, and that's gonna really train, keeping that neutral position, that good position when when the loads kind of pull us forward a little bit versus a normal barbell. So good mornings can fit in any of the areas here. Then probably the king of low back exercises and glute and hamstring, but in this case, low back, are reverse hypers. So, reverse hypers, you lay on a machine, it's about yay high, it's pretty tall. You lay on it, it's got some handles, you got the handles, and then your feet are kind of dangling off the edge. Your hip crease is right on the edge, dangling off the edge, and there's straps, you hook them in, and then basically you extend at the hip, and then it pulls under. So say this is the platform you're laying on, your feet, instead of being at 90, they get pulled under by the resistance, and that helps, take some pressure off the spine and the low back and the vertebrae, or in the discs and in between the vertebrae. And then once you extend out, obviously your glutes, hamstrings are gonna be working, but you're gonna get a massive low back pump as well. So reverse hypers are great if you have access to a reverse hyper machine. If you don't, you can do them body weight or with ankle weights or anything like that. What's up, Will? What's up? So if you don't have one of those machines, you can do them, whether it's body weight or ankle weights or something similar. It's not as good. What you can do, I know Louis talks about this a lot, this is how he first started, Louis Simmons, with the reverse hyper. When he was kind of in the process of inventing it, he took, a big sheet of wood and threw it up in a power rack with the pins high, and it was thick enough that he could lay on it, and then he would do the same thing basically, just with his body weight and then ankle weights. So that's an option as well. Not as good as obviously if you have a machine, but the machines are very, very expensive, and if your gym doesn't have access or doesn't have one, then you might be out of luck with that. But those are great options for the low back. So they're gonna be the three biggest ones here. Then we're gonna go into glutes specifically. There's lots here. So with pretty much all of these, I didn't write them or talk about them yet, but just any squat or deadlift variation is going to hit your glutes, it's going to hit your hamstrings. You're going to have your low back, your upper back's going to be involved as well, especially once you get heavier. So, glutes, squat deads, you can't beat them. Any variation, that's kind of like beating a dead horse. I don't think I have to talk about that too much. Everybody knows the squats and deadlifts train the glutes, and those are going to be your staples in your program. All of these are just accessory movements, but these are the main one, along with good mornings are going to be the meat potatoes. So I'm not really going to talk about those too much, just wanted to put those on there and touch on that. Then hip bridges. So hip bridges can be done numerous ways. We love to do hip bridges here at Acceleration, especially with a lot of our athletes. We train a lot of soccer players. They have a lot of hamstring and hip issues, and bridges do a lot to kind of correct those. So hip bridges are basically any movement, whether your back's on a bench or laying on the ground, but basically your hip is extending up, your glutes are contracting and hitting that kind of hip extension pattern. So hip bridges are phenomenal. You can do them with a barbell, kind of the classic hip bridge with your back up on a bench. You can do that same thing laying on the ground. Just make sure you use a pad, otherwise you're gonna get all bruised up. It doesn't feel good. You can do them, adding mini bands is great. So a band here above the knees to kind of, that's gonna prevent this, but also activate, the smaller glute muscles that I'm gonna touch on in a minute here. Kind of add to it. You can do single leg glute bridges. I love single leg glute bridges. Again, whether it's just laying flat on the ground, you can put a kettlebell on your hips, a dumbbell. You can put, I really like slam balls, so heavy, smaller slam balls on the hips. You can do with your foot up on a bench, laying on the ground, so to change the range of motion, get more range of motion. Any hip bridge variation is going to be very good for the glutes. Then lateral walk variations. So this is going to hit the deeper glute muscles. It's not just your glute max, the big one. It's going to be the glute medius and minimus underneath. And it's kind of hard to hit these with normal, any of these that I touched on, just because they're very specific in what they do. Basically, a lateral walk is going to be, you can use bands around your feet, you can use bands around your shins, above the knees, but here, walking out, and then you're gonna kind of feel it in this area a lot deeper. Those are going to be great, and those are really good for really any person, but athletes and people with low back pain, or just have prevent low back pain. Those are gonna be great, because a lot of people are weak there with, maybe their glute max is good, but their glute medius isn't quite up to par, and they kind of just die out that way. You can also do, kind of with this, you can do just laying on your side, raise it up and back down, kind of classic PT exercise with a ankle weight. Sorry, I couldn't think of the name. An ankle weight on. Those work as well for a little higher rep, and if you want to get a little more blood flow to the area. So lateral walks are going to be great for that. Then, kettlebell swings. I love kettlebell swings for the hips and the glutes because they are just great at what they do. So our kettlebell swing, popping the hips through, squeezing the glutes when you do them. It's a hip exercise, not a shoulder exercise. Keep that in mind if you haven't done them. Kettlebell swings are great for that, and they're great at building explosive hips as well. And I like them because they're usually done in high rep sets, and it kind of helps train the hinge pattern a little bit, and really emphasize the squeeze, the contraction of the glute max here at top, because if you do it right, you can really feel your glutes tighten up there, contract, and you kind of just get used to doing that, and then you do that when you deadlift, when you squat, when you bridge, any of those, it's gonna really help out there. And also the glutes, reverse hypers, talked about those are gonna hit the glutes, tremendous, and good mornings, and back extensions. So they're all kind of interchangeable, but those are my main ones for the glutes. And also with the deadlifts, so I also want to just know RDLs are great. So Romanian deadlifts, so starting from the top, hips back, down, and up. Those are great too. I know I said deadlift variations, but I just want to throw that in there, that I do consider that in there. So that is that. We can move on to hammies. So with the hamstrings, lots of these are going to include hamstring work, whether it's isometric or they're actively contracting. Again, squats and deadlifts, they're gonna be your king, but specifically hamstrings. Love ham curls. Light band ham curls are great. I really like using the band because of the added resistance at the top. And when you do these, for this reason, you want to go high rep and very fast. It almost looks violent, like the action almost looks violent if you're doing them correctly, because that's going to train, or it's going to help prevent injury in the tendons and kind of the main muscle belly area, obviously, but it's going to really help prevent tendon issues and getting a lot of blood flow to that area is great. So ham curls are awesome for that. And again, you can use them. You can do seated, you can do standing, you can do lying, bands, machines, anything like that, ankle weights, high rep work on those though. Then, didn't really touch on this yet too much, but this also is included in there. Glute ham raises. So on a glute ham developer, a GHD, start at the top vertical, let yourself down, then come on back up. And you can go just the parallel with the floor, or you can go all the way down, do the back extension, then the glute ham raise. There's also lots of other variations that you can do with these, but just the main movement pattern of the glute ham raise is going to be tremendous for building the glutes and the hamstrings, right? So just keep in mind those are interchangeable here and there. They're tremendous for building the posterior chain. And especially for strength athletes or athletes in general, that's kind of where they're most popular, is with powerlifters or in kind of the athlete, collegiate strength and conditioning world in high school. But the strength and conditioning world, because of the transfer of them with, athletes, strength athletes, or just regular old athletes. So those are going to be awesome for the hamstrings. And then kind of with that, again, I'm going to beat the dead horse, but your deadlift variations are going to go here as well. And can kind of beat the dead horse here, but your deadlift variations are going to go here as well, whether it's stiff leg, RDL, regular. They're all going to hammer the hammies and really build up that area. So don't forget about those. Same with good mornings. And also, kind of different approach, different way of thinking for some people. Most people don't think of box squats as a hamstring exercise, but in fact it is. Kind of got this from the powerlifting side of things, especially geared powerlifting. They do a lot of box squats. Louis, the conjugate system, a lot of box squats included. I love them. One, for teaching people how to squat, but two, a lot more hamstring involved when you sit back on the box like that. And if you're doing them right, you almost dig through your heels and help pull yourself up with your hamstrings. So those are going to be tremendous for kind of obviously building the glutes, like I said, squat variation and quads and low back and upper back, whole posterior chain. But they're also going to help out with the hamstrings, and kind of interestingly, in a different way of thinking, at least for the bodybuilding community or whatnot. So those are tremendous. Then what I want to do here as well, let's talk about sleds. Now, sleds can be used in lots of different ways. You can do sled drags, sled pulls, sled pushes, heavy. You can do sled sprints with lightweight. Now they're gonna hammer a lot of different things. It just depends on the variation, right? And you can even use them for face pulls, rows, and that upper back work. But they're gonna hit, the hamstrings. If you're doing sled, really any sled variation, but there's specific variations that you can do with the sled to really hammer your hamstrings. You can go kind of straight leg walks. So you're here pulling the sled, right? Those are gonna hammer your hamstrings, fry them. And you don't need a lot of weight for those, right? Remember the first time I did those, I took the sled out of the parking lot out of the gym, and I about died halfway through. And it's like, I don't know if I can get this thing back to the gym because my hamstrings are so fried from them. So with that, also sleds, glutes, because of the fact of the hip extension, whether you're doing heavy pushes, sprints, pulls, drags, whatever variation. Then again, upper back, you can throw some handles on there, do rows, do face pulls, do explosive rows where you get your hips in, and that's gonna also use the glutes where you're pop hips through as you row with the upper back. So sleds are very interchangeable. Not too much low back wise, but a lot glutes, hamstrings, and upper backs. Excuse me, upper back. So sleds kind of want to put those in everywhere. And also another one that I want to put in, again, tire flips. So tire flips, just similar to a deadlift. You know, they're gonna hit your hamstrings, they're gonna hit your glutes, they're gonna hit your low back, they're gonna hit your upper back. So tire flips kind of go everywhere, and I love tire flips as not only a conditioning tool, but a strength builder, you know, kind of a strongman style, you know, and it's fun, right? So those things can go everywhere, upper back, low back, glutes, or hamstrings. So that was a long video, guys. Covered a lot of information. I hope that helped out. I kind of like this style of the whiteboard. Then you guys can see also kind of the breakdown of it, and I think I want to do a lot more of these, and I'll probably do the whole series on these. So this week was posterior chain, and then maybe I'll do an upper body next week, whether I break it down into, you know, pressing or chest or arms, or even if I don't make them quite as long, muscle groups, quads, you know, whatever it happens to be. I do like this a lot. So if you have any questions, guys, hit me up on social media, John Pap Fitness on most things, J-Pap on Snapchat. Always down to answer you guys' questions. Hit like, subscribe, share with your friends. If you could, guys, I really appreciate that. So I know as you guys, or that lets me know that you are watching. So have a great day, guys. Chase it and get your posterior strong.